So without further ado, except for a brief note, our three premier organizations dealing with issues sounding in Catholic social doctrine, the St. Thomas More Society, Knights of Columbus, and Lex Vitae. I'd like to thank their sponsorship of this conversation series. And now, if we can hear from Professor Jane Dahl, her conversation on new rights, so-called same-sex and gay rights. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank Brian and Mark, and also Robert and Father for participating in this series. I'd also like to thank Robert. It was a organization between myself and him, and this wouldn't have been possible without his efforts. So thank you. I'm going to divide my remarks into two basic parts. I'm going to first give a case study on someone making the case for against same-sex marriage, and then the response to that. I will also move into some general comments about mercy and justice per se. So, Maggie Gallagher, co-founder of the National Organization for Marriage and co-author with John Corbino of Debating Same-Sex Marriage, produced an article entitled Bigotry, David Blankenhorn, and the Future of Marriage. She writes, "Marriage is the union of male and female, the way society tries to give a child the gift of his own mother and father in one family union. Gay marriage is part of the process of deinstitutionalizing marriage, removing it from a tight matrix of social norms designed to give us good children. It is part of a larger process of reformulating marriage as a product of choice oriented toward the private goods of the people who choose it," end quote. She continues, "The truth about something as important as marriage cannot be the price we pay to live with each other. The challenge of our time is to find new ways to combine truth and love. Giving up marriage is too high a price to pay, and it is not the last good we will be asked to surrender, unless we find the courage to stand," end quote. Her article focuses on the change of position of her dear friend, David Blankenhorn, the head of Institute for American Values and author of various books like Fatherless America and the Future of Marriage. She describes his current views as follows. Quote, "It isn't that David no longer sees a conflict of goods in embracing gay marriage. He simply thinks that the battle is lost. So now he has only one hope, that by trying something new, he can make something good in marriage happen," end quote. She then goes on to cite directly the words of Blankenhorn in his new approach. And this is what he says. "So my intention is to try something new. Instead of fighting gay marriage, I'd like to help build new coalitions, bringing together gays who want to strengthen marriage with straight people who want to do the same. For example, once we accept gay marriage, might we also agree that marrying before having children is a vital cultural value that all of us should do more to embrace? Can we agree that for all lovers who want their love to last, marriage is preferable cohabitation? Can we discuss whether both gays and straight people should think twice before denying children born through artificial reproductive technology the right to know and be known by their biological parents? Will this strategy work? I don't know, but I hope to find out," end quote. He had previously argued and presented a very reasonable case similar to what Maggie Gallagher herself had laid out with respect to the opposition to gay marriage, where he stated that he believed that children had the right insofar as society makes it possible to know and to be cared for by their two parents. He also argued that marriage is how society recognizes and protects this right. Marriage is the planet's own institution whose core purpose is to unite biological, social, and legal components of parenthood into one lasting bond. Marriage says to a child, the man and the woman whose sexual union made you will also be there to love and raise you. What happened? What precipitated the change in his thought? Or is there a change in his thought? David Blankenhorn gave testimony in a case related to California Proposition 8. If you remember, that was a proposition entitled Eliminating Rights of Same-Sex Couples to Marry. It was an initiative, a constitutional initiative entitled the California Marriage Protection Act. Now, what that was supposed to do was to add the definition of marriage between one man and one woman into the California Constitution. It was upheld at the state level and overturned basically at the federal level. And David Blankenhorn in these cases gave testimony in support of definition of marriage between one man and one woman. He was crucified for his efforts. Maggie describes the aftermath in the following terms, quote, after his testimony was over, Blankenhorn was attacked in the media, accused of being unqualified, ignorant, and bigoted. And what happened at Proposition 8, we know. What can one conclude from Blankenhorn's experience? Maggie argues the following. Quote, the lessons gay marriage advocates will take from David Blankenhorn's conversion, they will learn what they know. Stigma and hatred directed at people who disagree with them, with their work. What lessons should we take? What lessons do I take? The first is that no one can fight alone. To stand up to the wall of hatred directed our way, we need each other. We need the larger sense of community that faith uniquely provides. The second is that as we fight for the good, we must never respond to hatred with hatred, to exclusion with the desire to exclude. Now I'd like to move on to the issue of the relationship between justice and mercy. The case scenario really raises a number of issues, but our purpose is let's deal with this relationship between justice and mercy. When we consider this case, and can you ask, who showed mercy? Who lacked mercy? Who demonstrated justice? Who lacked justice? Does the law defining marriage between one man and one woman lack justice? Lack mercy? Is it unjust? What would be more just? On such issues, I'd like to consider the thought of canonists on the theme of mercy and justice in marriage at a conference held at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome, in anticipation of the Holy Father's announcement for the extraordinary Jubilee Year of Mercy. This discussion took place with the context of marriage as a sacrament and contemporary pastoral concerns, but foundational principles are also relevant for natural marriage in our discussion today. At the aforementioned conference, Professor Carlos Jose Errázuriz described the most common misunderstanding of mercy and law as a vision of opposites. He explains, frequently mercy and law are perceived to be radically contradictory, being two separate worlds following two opposing logic systems. On the one hand, there is a kind, flexible, and compassionate love. On the other hand, a system of rigid norms that ignore the most intimate of personal requirements. End quote. He goes on to rightly emphasize that this type of dialectic hides an insufficient concept of both mercy and law. Mercy is presented in such ways to render its effect independent of what is truly good and just for the person and for others. In this way, the practical truth of justice is put in parentheses. The consequence of this can be easily seen. We are faced with a pseudo mercy that does not really face up to the questions and offer solutions in appearance only. Law, on the other hand, is reduced to a set of positive norms or human precepts without taking into account the law's inseparability from justice, truth, and goodness. Rather, the law is viewed as a rigid, cold instrument, indifferent to the reality of persons, the family, and communities. Now, Professor Erasmus promotes the vision of harmony between these two concepts. He argues that there is a profoundly harmonious bond between mercy and justice. He defines mercy as a mighty power of the soul that pushes towards satisfying the right of the person in all cases, and towards effectively seeking out the past for their safeguarding and promotion. He continues, if this were not the case, mercy would no longer be a virtue, but merely a disordered sentiment. Mercy would then pushing to adopt measures that are incompatible with divine parameters of justice. Their evils are not alleviated and worse, they grow and multiply. In brief, genuine mercy has an impulsion to justice and the realities of justice at the heart of concerns for marriage and family. Similarly, Professor Bauer contends that mercy consists of a compassionate heart, that is, a heart that takes on the misery of another person. It may include both material and spiritual goods, including teaching, correction, and forgiveness. And Professor Bauer also argues that mercy needs to be administered through a legal order or framework. As an example, he turns to Aristotle and the issue of equity, what we know as equity, based on human laws as general norms, abstract from particular circumstances of person, places, and things. The duty and justice can be mitigated, for example, with the concept of equity. In certain circumstances, exceptional conditions make fulfillment of the rule inapplicable. It is an example of limits of the law and the effort to harmonize the requirements of law with the requirements of mercy. In canon law, an example is the dispensatio misericordiae, that is, dispensations from the law precisely in relation to the extension of mercy in individual cases for a just cause. Because both mercy and justice are viewed as being contained in the general part. That's why the term extensions of mercy is used. Bauer contends that the human law is to be distinguished from the divine law, which is constitutive and creative of a reality that acts within the being of things in such a way that there are no exceptions. In our case, the reality, and we know this by right reason, is that God created man and woman in such a way that if it really is a natural marriage, it is such the same way that a human person has a right to life, which is not because there is a positive law. We know by right reason that a man and a woman come together to marry, if they're open to life, and create a life. It's common sense. In the case of same-sex marriage, though, the common claim is that the law is unjust. One must choose mercy over the current law and change the law. The claim is not asking for a dispensation or flexibility in the general application of the law pertaining to marriage, which would be problematic in itself and for a number of other reasons. Rather, the effort is to change the universal principle that we know by right reason, namely by redefining marriage, which in turn strike at the divine norm that's creative of a reality, constitutive of reality. And this divine norm also we attack. Norm is attacked in its embodiment, and I would argue of mercy and justice as acknowledged by the state and administered by the state in a system for the common good of society, including the good of the spouses and children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Adolph. And now from our respondent, Father Peter Ryan.
Well, it's my pleasure to respond to Dr. Adolph's very fine presentation. Just want to mention that it was an honor to work with the bishops. I'm now here at the Sacred Heart Seminary with Dr. Castici, a wonderful place. Now, Dr. Adolph made some important her points about mercy. And of course, we're very much in agreement that authentic mercy is not just a matter of giving people whatever they have to want, of endorsing whatever view of marriage they may have, or whatever way of life they have to embrace. Rather, it's a matter of considering what's truly good for people. It's really crucial to set out the moral principles at stake. Of course, doing that does not always elicit a kind response, as David Blankenhorn learned from a very bitter experience. And many Gallagher certainly agrees that it is important to set out the principles of morality with respect to marriage. She quit her job at David Blankenhorn's Institute for American Values, saying, and I quote, a vision that she was talking about the need to set out a vision of marriage. A vision, she says, that it has now become necessary to defend intellectual in principle and from first principle. And of course, I really agree with that. I'd like to discuss the Catholic Church's teaching on homosexuality, but I'd like to emphasize that that teaching is not just one sort of something disconnected from her teaching in general on marriage and sexuality. The Church is a beautiful vision of marriage, of the human person, of the complementarity of male and female, of the importance of making commitments to each other in a way that would be the proper setting to be able to raise children and so forth. Now, with respect to homosexuality, the Church teaches that those who experience homosexual inclinations should be treated with respect, with compassion, with sensitivity. They shouldn't be subjected to unjust discrimination. They should be understood as very much valued children of God like all of us. But the Church does also teach that homosexual acts are intrinsically wrong, and that the state should not give legal recognition to same-sex unions. Of course, the Supreme Court in the United States already has essentially legalized same-sex marriage, but I'm not going to try to get into the political situation now. I'm going to focus on principles underlying the Church's teaching. It's really a radically countercultural teaching. It's been called unlike, even hateful. It's been condemned as promoting unjust discrimination. So the question is, can the teaching be justified? Well, Christians look to Scripture, first of all, for guidance. There in both the Old and New Testaments, we find long exhortations to love our neighbor, explicit condemnations of homosexual acts, and emphasis on the deeply personal meaning of the body. The human body has the character of a gift that is often given and received only when a couple, after having vowed permanent love and fidelity, come together bodily to complete each other. Genesis is getting at this when it says the man cleaves to his wife and they become one flesh. On conceiving a son, the woman exclaims, I have got the man with the help of the Lord. But the teaching of the Church on sex and marriage can be defended, even apart from focusing explicitly on Revelation. Sexual acts derive their meaning from the one flesh union they point to, and that they begin to actualize. Heterosexual acts cannot have the proper meaning if they're not ordered to one flesh body and couples committed to marriage. And so too, sex acts can't have the proper meaning if authentic one flesh union is not possible. Then marriage itself is not possible. This is not unjust discrimination, but insight into reality. Again, it's one part of a broad teaching on marriage that understands man and woman as being complementary to each other, and sex acts as having the proper meaning only when it's a part of a lifelong commitment. Well, as for same-sex couples, they may intend lifelong fidelity, but they can't achieve authentic one-flesh unity. The necessary complementarity is missing. They cannot complete each other bodily. The sex acts are necessarily different in kind from the act that, under the right circumstances, under the right conditions, leads to the conception of a child. Now, the point is not that a same-sex couple can't conceive a child. Infertile heterosexual couples, for example, elderly couples, well, they also can't conceive a child, but they can, as the church has held, rightly get married. So the point is that unlike fertile and infertile heterosexual couples, same-sex couples lack the bodily complementarity that makes one flesh union and therefore marriage itself possible. Notice certain kinds of sex acts that substitute complete sexual act for an act of the marriage act are also wrong. Not just the teaching against same-sex couples, but the meaning of the body and completing of each other, engaging only complete sexual acts that are the sort that really make them be a one-flesh union. Now, by legally recognizing same-sex marriage, the government inevitably teaches that marriage is not about the kind of one-flesh union that under the proper conditions can result in children, but instead is about unions based on intensely felt emotional desire. Now, rightly integrated emotion is, of course, good, but let's face it, desire wax and wane. And they don't really indicate what marriage essentially is. If marriage is defined by emotional desire, then it need not be permanent or exclusive. A marriage would approach the end when emotional desire ends. And there's nothing in principle excluding marriage from involving multiple partners who share the same desire. Public policy should reflect the truth that marriage is about complementary one-flesh union, then surely Catholic apostolic works ought to reflect it. So those in Catholic schools should make the proper commitment and so forth that should characterize all of the church's mission. Criticizing the church, this is one of the things that's gone on in the public forum with respect to the church, criticizing the church, terminating the employment of people who make public commitments to being involved in a same-sex marriage, a so-called marriage. It's not absurd to terminate them, the church, to say, no, we don't think that you're articulating the proper values. We wouldn't, for example, criticize an environmentalist group for dismissing representatives who advocate offshore drilling. Also, too, the church has a certain meaning, a certain teaching that her employees ought to live out. Now, people who struggle with same-sex attraction, they clearly deserve our support. And those who do so faithfully, they're really admirable. Their courage is admirable. But unfortunately, instead of supporting them, we just don't do that when we think that they're defined by this attraction. And then they're only going to realize their true dignity by giving themselves permission to act on it. I think that approach exacerbates the struggle that people with same-sex inclinations experience. Instead of teaching that homosexual acts are wrong and that the inclination to engage in such acts, although not sinful itself, is an objective disorder, that teaching seems to be an affront to their personal dignity. But it's not improper. We're all broken in various ways. And none of us ought to think of our brokenness as defining us. Catholics believe that they're defined by something far deeper. That is our identity as children of God. But all of us, those who experience same-sex attraction, are called to discover the personal worth, the loving and affirming gaze of our Creator and Redeemer. There, as we begin to taste the intimate community we deeply desire, we're able to receive, all of us, grace we need complete and even growing lives. So I thank you.
Thank you. Professor Adolph, would you like to respond initially to Father Ryan's comment?
Well, what I'm very happy with is there's so many things I couldn't touch within my presentation, and he fleshes out really the case, not only based on right reason, as well as can be seen in the magisterium, and we're in agreement with the understanding of mercy, certainly, that it's not as simply emotion. And I think he's laid out the case quite effectively, and has touched on a lot of the key issues.
And Father Ryan, would you like to rejoin?
Well, I appreciate those comments, and I think it's important to realize that, again, we're talking about people with same-sex inclinations and the whole push to legalize, in fact, the success in legalizing same-sex marriage, but it's really part of a broader cultural phenomenon that's been going on for many years. It's really all about the sexual revolution and it's a fruit of the sexual revolution, which didn't begin with a focus on homosexuality. There were heterosexuals who were pushing a certain understanding of sexuality for the last 50 years. And this vision of marriage, same-sex marriage being perfectly appropriate, I think can be traced back to that. There was a focus on trying to justify things like cohabitation. We have no-fault divorce, thinking of extramarital sex as being perfectly acceptable, bearing children outside of marriage, treating pornography as though it's perfectly all right. We have a whole hookup culture, and possible, all these things. Very articulately, by the way. He's quite a defender of marriage. In any case, all of those things contributed to the breakdown of the moral culture. And it's not as though it just began with legal redefinition of marriage. Rather, that is the conclusion from everything that went before that I just described. So, in any case, I wanted to add those comments.
Thank you. We now open it up for comments from our audience. Would anyone care to do you have a question for Professor Adolph or for Father Ryan, or both? A word from our panel, our seated panel of student organizations. Since I gave the floor to the panel, I'll come back to Professor Bonner. Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Professor Adolph, this is a question for you. You spoke about the effort to change the principle of right reason, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on how one would go about changing that principle.
Yeah, I don't know whether I said they're trying to change the principle of right reason. I think it's more likely, and I think this point was brought up by the Father, in dealing with this marriage question, you have to acknowledge that we can know certain things, and there's objective reality that we can know, and then to use our reasoning, our faculty of reason, and then looking at Revelation, we can know the fullest, but we can also give our reasons, not just based on Scripture, but with other arguments that for persuasion for those that do not believe. I think the thing that we're not doing, and this is where the pressure is to deal with these issues based on emotion where we're not looking at facts. There's a biological difference between men and women, DNA. And that's part of the argument of complementarity. I mean, we have people arguing that when Father mentioned union, people are arguing that sodomy is a type of union. Well, I just don't think that is within the realm of the union that we know. So we're losing our ability to absolutely say what we want to say based on what we observe in fact and reality. And I think one of the reasons is ultimately gender ideology. And this ideology is quite dangerous in the sense that it's really ignoring truth, ignoring good, ignoring objective fact.
Thank you. Professor Bonner, you had your you had a question.
So apropos of Father Ryan's observation that, one doesn't want to define oneself by one's weaknesses, and Professor Adolph's, reference to right reason, I was wondering if either of you, either in the International Forum or in the pastoral sphere, have ever had any luck with homosexuals in getting them to buy into the fact that yes, they do have a seriously disordered condition that they need to deal with, or is this total denial or what?
Well, I'd be happy to give the answer to that question. It's I think a very important question. I work for, I help with the apostolate of courage, which was done by Brother John Harvey, and a wonderful apostolate trying to help men and women who experience same-sex attraction to live chaste lives. And they have an annual conference, and it's really very crowded. Many, hundreds of people who experience same-sex attraction, who have experienced a conversion, that are trying to live holy, chaste lives, come and they find support, they find joy, they find community. Sure, they're dealing with struggles, and I think the more they're involved in this sort of group and making this kind of an effort and really praying and trying to live good, holy lives, the more they begin to realize that their identity is as children of God and not something that's defined by the sexual desires that they experience. By the way, there's a wonderful movie that was made just 2 years ago. It's called Desire of the Everlasting Hills. And it's about 3 people who experience same-sex attraction. And they talk about their history and how they came to understand that this was really not, living this lifestyle was really not bringing them happiness. And there are really 3 very different stories. One was a woman who was living with another woman for many years and gradually came to understand that this was not really enabling her to become who God created her to be. And she's a very happy, lovely person, and much happier now that she's living as she knows she ought to according to the teaching of the church. The other 2, one of them is a fellow, Paul, who was very, very much involved in the whole so-called gay lifestyle. I mean, he was in the middle of it. Many of his friends died of AIDS. But he's had a powerful conversion experience. And anyway, I won't go on, except to really recommend that movie to you, which I think you'll find quite enlightening on the topics you raised.
I'll just respond quickly, because I think Mark is getting at whether we can actually or do persuade during these conferences we attend. So you've got the Courage group, which is one one aspect in terms of people coming in community, and there's a certain, within Courage, a certain charism to that group. The group I attend are academic. And most of the people there may be people that are really seeking the truth at these conferences, and I hope so, but the majority of the time when you go to these conferences, the lines have been drawn. People are there to hear one position. It's not really about persuading. On the other hand, when you do write your paper, there are those that it becomes available around the world, and there are plenty of people that don't know how to think about certain things or what arguments, and you hope that you will touch people of goodwill, and you'll touch them, truth will ring through. So.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
I guess this can go to the father and also to Professor Dahl. Do you feel within your own expertise that the growing number of LGBT NQ community growing, as far as this approach, that it's pushing those away that do have a belief in the higher power or a belief in God, and because of these views being so drastic in one way, it pushes them away from coming to our faith or becoming Catholics or Christians?
Sorry, could you give me the question?
With the,
Yes, Brian?
with the LGBT community growing in drastic numbers, and the way you're saying it as far as them in same-sex marriages, do you feel with the strong stance that the church has that this pushes away that community even more to finding God?
Okay, and I think Father would like to weigh on this too. Is one of the things that, for example, if you actually read the document on the pastoral care of persons with homosexual tendencies, you cannot come out of that document and say the church hates these people. If you understand who the church is and what the church is all about, which is a visible and invisible structure, and the visible structure is filled with sinners, I mean, you just can't come to this conclusion. But I don't think people know what the church teaches. Did you know that there was a document on pastoral care of homosexual persons? Did you know that there was another document on, talking about considerations for these type of for same-sex proposals or de facto unions? Have you read the catechism? They're beautiful statements. And so, number one, I don't think people know about it, and number two, they could be genuinely hurt by insensitive Catholics. And then they're reacting against the church. There's always that, or been hurt by people in the church. Okay, but I think what you have to do is you have to urge people to understand where the church is coming from, and reading the material. And saying, listen, there is the group called Courage that actually welcomes people. Not only that, if you think about the highest percentage of people that have AIDS that are being treated around the world are by Catholic institutions. They are treating the majority of people with AIDS around the world. And so there's no way that, you know, if you really knew more, you could say that the church is pushing people away. Now, the fact that the church teaches on things like fornication is a sin. Is it pushing away young people like yourself? That I don't know whether you're married. Are they pushing away you? Because fornication or masturbation, is that something that now you can't, the church is coming down on people that are cohabiting with each other? It's the church is proposing the moral principles. It's not imposing. It's up to you to read, think, pray, understand, and think with the heart of the church. So those are proposals, not condemnations. And those were proposals are because God is love, created us in love, to love each other and to come back with Him in love. It's not a preoccupation with sexual matters. The church is obsessed with love in the authentic sense.
Well, thank you, Dr. Schultz, inviting me to weigh in, and I will do so. And I think after that, Dr. Casici wanted to say something. Well, what I'd like to say is that You know, the church's teaching on sexual morality is all of a piece, and I think Dr. Ed also brought that out very beautifully. Teaching on masturbation, teaching on contraception, teaching on homosexuality, teaching on premarital sex. It's not as though we're just having this teaching on people who experience same-sex attraction and we're alienating them, and we could give up any part of what we hold in order to try to attract people. But what would we be attracting them to? We'd be attracting them to something that has now been dismantled in order to attract them. And that's kind of a pointless effort. If we emphasize the beauty of the faith, we emphasize the truth of Jesus having that God loved us so much that He would become one of us and offer us salvation and invite us into His kingdom, and only we remain faithful to Him and are willing to make certain sacrifices. We realize that salvation is not automatic. But the Lord is one for us, and all we have to do is cooperate with His grace. We really realize that and present it as a beautiful whole to people, then we can attract them. And even though the church is teaching on sexuality will strike some people as a strange bit of bad news within the good news, that they attempt to throw the good news overboard completely, when we help them see how much they are loved and the intimacy to which they are called, properly understood within the body of Christ, then they can be attracted despite the fact that within the Christian life involves sacrifice of different kinds for everything.
Well, Dr. Frestighi, would you like to make a comment?
So, I'm very inspired by this discussion. It's wonderful to hear Professor Dahl trying to articulate the church's teaching, which is not just the church's teaching, as a natural law. So my question follows on this. In terms of the worldwide situation, is this push for recognizing same-sex marriage something primarily from North America, from Europe, maybe parts of Latin America? I don't think in Africa it's well accepted, or in the Muslim world. I think it's something that, as Pope Francis has talked about, is being pushed by a type of ideological colonization. And Pope Francis has spoken out very eloquently against what you identified as gender ideology. So I know you've dealt with United Nations in the world. Do you think that this is something that's being pushed on developing countries in Africa and the Muslim world?
Yeah, exactly. I think it is, and it's being pushed in response to money. So the organizations will say, "Well, we'll give you this money, but you have to implement these policies," and it's a real coercion for example, many of the African countries. And one of the primary promoters of this ideological colonization is Planned Parenthood. Some of the international conferences that I've gone to, they would have representatives of Planned Parenthood stay with the delegation, haunt the delegation, be with the delegation, because Planned Parenthood had funded their trip, and they want to make sure that they're going to be online, these people from Africa. And so they're always with the delegation as they go along, and they speak with other states. I've also, in the middle of international negotiations, a representative from the European Union tried to shut down the representative of the African group by reminding him where he got his money during negotiations. So it's that raw, and it's unfortunately, there has not been an outcry against this coercion on an international level, and one of the reasons is because those that would be the source of the outcry need money.
I would just like to add and to corroborate what you've been saying, that in paragraph 76 in the vocation and mission of the family and the church and in the contemporary world, the Synod of Bishops on the Family, paragraph 76 says, "In every way, the Synod maintains as completely unacceptable that local churches be subjected to pressure in this matter, and that international bodies link financial aid to poor countries to the introduction of laws to establish marriage between people of the same sex. So this has been taken up at, the highest levels, that this noted that this is going on.
I just want to add one thing. Thank you, Brian. One thing about this conversation. It's part of it's this thing about, after the mass shootings in Orlando. Mass shootings in Orlando, for example, were done by a Muslim man who, from his ex-wife, said that he had actually frequented this gay club. Okay? There was an outcry against the Catholic Church in the news by some people saying that violence that goes beyond being outside the church, that actually the church is promoting violence against. I don't know how the Catholic Church had anything to do with the Orlando shooting, to be honest with you. I mean, if it was a fundamental Catholic, I would say, okay, maybe let's talk about it. But there was not even an issue, but it became an issue in the paper. And the reason why is because they were putting through a human rights resolution in the United Nations within days of that happening. They wanted to put the Holy See off and back off so that resolution went through. And it did go through, and it's to create an independent rapporteur for LGBTI interests when sexual orientation and gender identity is not accepted as wording within the United Nations system, let alone having a rapporteur on undefined terminology. So, what we have to realize here that there is when people come out and start making statements, and they're influential people, and they're pushing the church on these issues, you can bet that there's something going on globally within the United Nations for something. That's exactly what happened. So I think that we have to back off a little bit on this. The church is creating violence, a violent type of atmosphere, and just think common sense. For example, I'm a mother. I have a daughter and a son, and the son is hitting my daughter. If I say to the son, that's bad, don't hit the daughter, does that mean I hate my son? We have laws that are criminal, and we say that murder is bad. So if we say, not only that, it's a crime, you're going to prison, and is that condemning everybody that they're going to hell that's committed murder? We don't go that far. We look at the act, and we have an obligation to judge the act, not necessarily the soul, but the act. And if you look around in our culture, how many shows are we talking about judging? We're judging dancers. We're judging singers. We're judging books. And all of a sudden, can't their acts. Look at those television programs. We have a judging culture, except when the church makes decision to an can't judge it. So I think that we have to relate and understand and start to use our reason and I reason.
Well, I want to thank all of our presenters and our audience today. I think it's very appropriate that this topic is included in our conversation. It's a civilization defining issue, and if I can quote from Chief Justice Roberts in his dissent in Oakville, he points out that as a result, the court invalidates the marriage laws of more than half the states and orders the transformation of a social institution that has formed the basis of human society for millennia. For the Kalahari Bushmen, the Han Chinese, the Carthaginians, and the Aztecs. Just who do we think we are? Well, thank you for your reflections on this, and we look forward to our continuing conversation next week when Dean Kevin Seacher will be discussing with us the topic of capital punishment. Thank you again, and God bless.